The concrete walls of Brooklyn Heights trapped the morning heat, turning the air around the bustling film set of John Wick, Chapter 5, into a shimmering, oppressive soup. The scent of hot asphalt mingled with the aroma of street food, a familiar perfume of city life that usually grounded Keanu Reeves. Today, it felt like a closing fist. Camera equipment littered the area, cables snaking across the ground like dormant serpents. "That's a wrap for this scene, folks," the director's voice boomed. "1-hour lunch." A collective sigh of relief washed over the crew. A group gathered near the catering truck. "Hey, Keanu, Deli on Atlantic. You in?" Keanu turned, a friendly but tired smile on his lips. His attention, however, was on Buddy, the brindle pit bull who had been his co-star for the last 3 films. The dog stood panting heavily, his tongue lolling out. "You guys go ahead," Keanu replied, his eyes fixed on the dog. "I think I'll take our 4-legged friend here for a walk. He looks like he could use it." The dog keeper, a lanky man named Tim, stepped forward. "That's all right, Mr. Reeves. It's my job." "I'd like to," Keanu insisted, his expression earnest. "It'll help our bond for the next scene." He handed Tim a $100 bill. "Get yourself a nice lunch. We won't go far." Tim, pocketing the bill, handed over the leash, a collapsible water bowl, and a handful of waste bags. Keanu knelt, securing the leash to Buddy's collar with a practiced gentleness. "Up for a walk, Buddy?" he murmured. Buddy's tail wagged enthusiastically. Leaving the controlled chaos of the set behind, the unlikely pair set off into the unpredictable streets. The heat was relentless. After several blocks, they found a quaint cafe, its shaded patio a welcoming oasis. The sign read, "The Gilded Mug." Keanu chose a corner table, unclipped Buddy's leash, and patted the seat beside him. The dog hopped up gracefully, drawing admiring glances from nearby patrons. A waitress named Maggie greeted them warmly. "Aren't you a handsome fellow?" she cooed at Buddy. Keanu ordered a coffee, a steak sandwich, and an unsalted steak portion for his companion. As they waited, Keanu pulled out his script, trying to immerse himself in the world of assassins and consequences. But the lines felt hollow today. The violence, a sterile fantasy. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when a burly man in a biker vest swaggered past their table. The vest bore the insignia of a snarling tiger with extended claws. He stopped, his face twisting into a sneer as he looked at Buddy sitting on the chair. "Filthy animal," he muttered, loud enough to be a proclamation, "sitting at the table like it's people." Before Keanu could process the insult, the man's boot lashed out. It wasn't a gentle nudge. It was a hard, vicious kick that caught Buddy squarely in the ribs. The dog let out a pained, piercing yelp that immediately turned into a defensive, terrified bark. The patio went silent, and in that instant, something inside Keanu Reeves broke. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was 1,000 hours of fight choreography, of drilled muscle memory, of inhabiting a character who solves problems with brutal efficiency, all erupting into the real world. The line between Keanu the Man and John Wick the Myth evaporated in a flash of pure, unadulterated rage. He didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He rose from his chair in a single fluid motion that was terrifyingly silent. The biker, expecting a verbal confrontation, was completely unprepared. Keanu's left hand shot out, not to grab, but to parry the biker's flailing arm, deflecting it outward. Simultaneously, his right hand chopped down on the man's exposed collarbone. There was a sickening, audible crack. The biker screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and agony. As he staggered back, clutching his shattered clavicle, Keanu's leg swept out, hooking the man's ankle. He went down hard, his head hitting the flagstones with a dull, wet thud. He didn't move. The entire patio was frozen in a state of collective shock. A woman gasped. Someone's fork clattered onto their plate. Then the spell broke. A half-dozen cell phones were raised, their small red recording lights blinking like malevolent eyes. Keanu stood over the unconscious biker, his chest heaving, the adrenaline beginning to recede, replaced by a wave of cold, dawning horror. What had he done? His eyes darted around at the faces staring at him, not with admiration but with fear. He saw Maggie, their plates in her hand, her face as white as a sheet. "Get away from him!" Another biker from the same gang yelled, starting to rise from a nearby table. Keanu didn't wait. He scooped up the whimpering, terrified Buddy, whose barks had turned to low groans of pain. He threw a handful of cash onto the table, $200-300 he didn't know, and bolted. He ran from the cafe, from the staring faces, from the recording phones, from the consequences of an act that had just irrevocably shattered his life. He didn't stop running for 6 blocks, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He finally ducked into a narrow, deserted alley between a laundromat and a pawn shop, his lungs burning. He gently set Buddy down, his hands shaking uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Buddy. I'm so sorry," he whispered, checking the dog over. There was a tender spot on his ribs, but the more alarming issue was Buddy's breathing. It was shallow, ragged. His eyes were becoming unfocused, and a string of drool hung from his jaw. It wasn't just the kick. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a news alert from TMZ. The headline was a punch to the gut. Keanu Reeves in violent brawl knocks out biker in Brooklyn cafe. Video inside. His world was tilting on its axis. He was a public figure, a man known for his kindness, and he had just committed a brutal public assault. The police would be looking for him. The media would be a ravenous wolf pack, and his dog was dying. He couldn't go to a vet. His face was the most recognizable on the planet right now. He couldn't go back to the set. He couldn't go to his hotel. He was a fugitive. Panic clawed at his throat, but years of training to remain calm under pressure, even fake pressure, kicked in. He needed help. Not from the police, not from his agent. He needed someone who operated in the gray spaces. He scrolled through his contacts to a name he rarely used. Ray. Ray was his head of security, a former Mossad agent who handled problems quietly and permanently. He answered on the first ring. "Talk to me." "Ray, it's me. I'm in trouble. Real trouble." Keanu's voice was a ragged whisper. "I'm in an alley off Flatbush. My dog, he's sick, maybe poisoned, and I hurt someone. Badly. It's everywhere already." There was no judgment in Ray's voice, only cold efficiency. "Stay put. Don't talk to anyone. Black Escalade, license plate ends in 7QR. 5 minutes. We'll handle the dog first." The 5 minutes felt like 5 years. Buddy's condition was deteriorating. He was listless, his body occasionally twitching. Keanu cradled the dog's head, whispering reassurances that felt like lies. The Escalade pulled up silently to the alley's entrance. The back door opened. Keanu bundled Buddy inside, and the truck melted back into traffic. "There's a vet," Ray said from the front seat, his eyes on the road. "She owes me a favor. No questions, no records. Works out of a basement clinic in Queens. We'll be there in 20. As they drove, Keanu's phone vibrated non-stop. His agent, his publicist, the studio head. He silenced it, his stomach churning. He could already picture the headlines, the late-night talk show jokes, the end of a career built on a gentle reputation. The vet was a stern, no-nonsense woman named Dr. Anya Petrova. Her clinic was a sterile, well-equipped facility, hidden behind a steel door in the basement of a brownstone. She took one look at Buddy, and her face became a grim mask. "On the table! Now!" she commanded. As she worked, drawing blood, administering an IV, Keanu paced the small waiting area. Ray stood by the door, a silent sentinel. "It's poison," Anya said, coming out an hour later, wiping her hands on a towel. "A nasty cocktail. Opioids to knock him out fast, and a powerful anticoagulant to finish the job. Rat poison, but a high-grade version. Whoever did this wanted him to die." The realization hit Keanu. This wasn't a random encounter. The kick was a provocation. The poisoning was the real attack, They were targeting him through his dog. "Can you save him?" Keanu asked, his voice breaking. "I've given him the antidote and started flushing his system," she said. "He is strong, but it will be close. He must stay here for at least 48 hours. I will watch him." Relief, fragile and temporary, warred with the crushing weight of his reality. Ray handed Anya a thick envelope of cash. "Thank you, doctor." Ray drove them to a nondescript industrial building in Long Island City. It was a safe house, a sterile apartment with blackout curtains and encrypted Wi-Fi. "Lay low here," Ray said. "No one will find you. I'll handle the fallout." For the next 24 hours, Keanu lived in a paranoid twilight. He watched the news, a form of self-torture. The cell phone video was on a constant loop. Pundits debated his mental state. The biker he'd attacked, a man named Cutter Vance, gave a tearful interview from his hospital bed, his arm in a sling, his head bandaged. He portrayed himself as an innocent victim, a family man attacked by an unhinged Hollywood star. The Snarling Tigers biker gang released a statement condemning the violence, positioning themselves as a misunderstood community club. They were hunting him. Ray confirmed it. The word was out on the street. A $100,000 bounty on his head, offered by the Tigers for the humiliation he'd caused them. The police had issued a warrant for his arrest. He was trapped, a ghost in his own life, a hero on screen, and a violent fugitive in reality. The anger began to burn away the fear. They had poisoned his dog. They had framed him. They were going to destroy him. He looked around the sterile apartment, at the blank walls. This wasn't him. Hiding wasn't a solution. He called Ray. "I'm not waiting for them to find me." "Keanu, don't be a fool. Let me handle it." "You're handling the PR, Ray." "I'm handling the problem." He hung up. A plan began to form. A dangerous, reckless plan born of desperation and the muscle memory of 100 fictional fight scenes. He wasn't John Wick, but he had spent years learning how to think like him. He knew about tactics, about using the environment, about psychological warfare. He spent the next few hours on the encrypted laptop, his acting skills taking a new form. He researched the Snarling Tigers, their hierarchy, their hangouts, their leader, a man named Silas. He studied maps of the film set, his primary location for the past month. He knew its layout better than his own home, the labyrinthine corridors of the fake Continental Hotel, the rooftop gardens, the industrial kitchen. It was his territory. He used a burner phone and a voice modulator to send an anonymous tip to Silas, the leader of the Tigers. The tip claimed that the actor, Keanu Reeves, was hiding out on his own film set, planning to flee the country with evidence that could expose their entire drug operation. He baited the trap with their greatest fear: exposure. He knew they wouldn't call the cops. Their pride and paranoia would force them to handle it themselves. That night, dressed in black tactical gear he'd borrowed from the film's wardrobe department, Keanu became a ghost on the set. He moved through the shadows, disabling the few security cameras, setting up small wireless ones of his own. Just after midnight, they came. Silas and 5 of his top men, including the mohawked biker who had fed Buddy the sausage. They were armed and arrogant, moving into the fake hotel lobby like they owned it. "Spread out," Silas growled. "Find him. I want him alive, for now." Keanu watched them on a tablet from his perch in the rafters above the grand ballroom. He wasn't going to fight them all. He was going to dismantle them. He started with psychological warfare. He used the set's speaker system, his voice, a disembodied, distorted whisper that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "You poisoned my dog, Silas." The men froze, looking around wildly. "You set me up," the voice echoed. "But you made a mistake. You brought your war to my world." He triggered a series of special effects from the control booth. Smoke filled the corridors. Strobe lights flashed, disorienting them. He used their confusion to isolate one of them, using a pulley rig to drop a heavy prop chandelier that penned the man in a cage of twisted metal without seriously injuring him. One by one, he separated them, using the set to his advantage. A trapdoor in the kitchen, a pressurized air hose to send another one sprawling. He was a phantom, always one step ahead. It wasn't about strength. It was about knowledge of the terrain. Finally, only Silas and the mohawked biker were left. He lured them to the rooftop garden, a stunning recreation of a Japanese rock garden, complete with a small wooden bridge over a shallow pool. Keanu stepped out of the shadows. "It's over, Silas." Silas laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "You're one man, actor. We're going to tear you apart." "Was it your idea to use rat poison?" Keanu asked, his voice dangerously calm, his eyes locked on the mohawked man. "Or did Silas tell you to?" The mohawked biker flinched. Silas's eyes narrowed. Keanu was sowing dissent. "He's weak," Keanu continued, taking a step closer. "He sends his lackeys to do his dirty work, then leaves them to take the fall." "Shut up!" Silas roared, lunging forward. The fight was short and brutal. Keanu didn't have the impossible endurance of his characters, but he was faster and more precise. He used Silas's momentum against him, redirecting his punch and trapping his arm. He disarmed him, sending the gun skittering across the roof. With a final, decisive move, he tripped Silas, sending him crashing into the shallow pool. The mohawked biker, seeing his leader defeated, lost his nerve. He pulled a knife, but his hands were shaking. "Drop it!" Keanu commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Or the recording of you confessing everything to your boss 5 minutes ago goes to every news station in the city, along with footage of your stash house." The man's face went pale. He dropped the knife. It was a bluff. Keanu had no such recording, but it was a damn good one. What he did have was video of them breaking and entering, armed, and their faces were clear as day. He left them there, tied up with stunt wire, and walked away. He made an anonymous call to the police, telling them about an armed home invasion at the film studio, and another call to a journalist he trusted, sending her the video files from the set. He was back in the safe house before the sun came up, watching as the news exploded with a new story. The snarling tigers arrested, their drug empire exposed. The biker he'd attacked, Cutter Vance, was implicated as a key player. The narrative began to shift. Keanu Reeves wasn't an unhinged attacker. He was a man pushed to the edge by a violent criminal gang that had poisoned his dog. 2 days later, Ray picked him up. "Buddy's out of the woods," he said, the first hint of a smile Keanu had seen on his face. "Anya says he'll make a full recovery." The wave of relief was so powerful, it brought Keanu to his knees. He had won. But the victory came at a cost. Later that day, after a quiet, emotional reunion with Buddy at the vet's clinic, Keanu Reeves, dressed in a simple suit, walked up the steps of the 78th Precinct in Brooklyn. He ignored the clamoring reporters and the flashing cameras. He walked past his agent, who was pleading with him to reconsider, and through the doors. He was a hero to some, a vigilante to others, but in the eyes of the law, he was still a man who had committed a violent assault. He had saved his dog and taken down a criminal enterprise, but he couldn't outrun the consequences of that single, terrible, and beautifully human moment when he had snapped. He was ready to face them,